Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Albert Berg.
I'm Tony Southcott.
We're coming to you
free
today.
Mother's Day. Shout out to all you moms out there. I know we got a few.
Yes. And shout out, by the way, biggest shout out of all to the most important mom to this podcast, my wife, Ashley Berg.
Yeah, definitely.
Makes this possible for real. Like, me sitting in front of the camera, no big deal. Her taking care of the kids, making sure they're occupied, making sure I have time to do this, and not being like, "Why are you doing this stupid podcast? It's like a waste of time."
Being supportive for 140 episodes now, not counting bonus episodes and TWA and all these other things I've dragged Al into.
She's super awesome, and I just can't thank her enough. And continue the awesomeness, by the way. Me and her, we had plans to go see Avengers Age of Ultron. Tonight, Tony, we were going to head out. We were going to see Avengers Age of Ultron because she hasn't seen it yet. I was like, I don't have to see it again, but I think you'd enjoy it, and we'll see it together. And then we found out that Ex Machina is playing at the same theater, and I was like, I got to see Ex Machina. Like, everybody's talking about this. I think we could talk about it on the podcast, which we actually are going to talk about it next week. But, and she just was like, yeah, that's okay. We can watch Avengers on Blu-ray or whatever. And I was like, she's the best. We're going to go watch robots. I don't know if they're evil robots or not. It seems like kind of ambiguous. Like, are they evil? Are they not evil? Ooh.
To be fair, you would have been talking or watching robots either way.
Yes, but like, I hopefully I will like Ex Machina more than I liked Ultron.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that I hated Ultron, but I aired my issues with that. I was kind of meh on that movie a little bit. I was really surprised about the backlash on the internet about Age of Ultron. Like, people are like, I can't believe they gave it a 75%. 75%? Oh my gosh. It's like, first of all, still a fresh rating, still like the majority positive reviews, but I felt like it was about a 75% movie for me. I understand that you may have liked it better or whatever, but I don't get like the shock. Like, oh, how dare they? How dare they downgrade it from the 90% the first Avengers had? It wasn't as good as the first Avengers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was just how I felt. I was just taken aback. I know that the internet gets all up in arms, but it seems weird. It seems very weird to me. Like the movies they choose to defend. They're like they come to the rescue or whatever of Interstellar, and like that Interstellar was the best. All right, and then like they're bashing other movies that I don't know.
You can't take the negativity sometimes. That's why you like abandon Twitter.
Well,
today.
This is obviously not negativity. These people really, really love the movie, and I understand that, but I don't get how they don't understand how reviewers might not have loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went, I'm trying to think of something that you might have gone and saw that you liked and the reviewers didn't like. If you like, I like Transformers. But I understand why it's only at 30% for the fourth one. I enjoyed going to the theater and seeing stuff blow up and seeing robots, but...
Well, it's like we saw Stoker, and that has like a 5 rating. 5 out of 10 on IMDb, something like that.
Well, it does it?
That's
IMDb is like users, though. That's not critics. That's a different type of...
True.
Thing.
I don't know what Stoker would be on Rotten Tomatoes.
Man,
but...
I wish I could pull that up, Tony, and find out.
I think the only the problem with the video podcast so far has been just not having our resources. We can't be as factually accurate when people are looking at us.
It's at 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is certified
better.
fresh, or not certified, but it is fresh.
Yeah.
And it's
fine.
fine.
If you actually get certified fresh, they'll send you a little trophy of that.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They also have the Golden Tomatoes Award, which they send out, which is pretty cool. It's just sort of them like at the Rotten Tomatoes talking over and being like, which one do we think was the best? Which one had the... Well, I say... no, that's actually a lie. What do they compare? They compare like how much of a release it got because they compare user ratings and critic ratings. There's this whole big formula that they go into. But last year they had... The Babadook won their horror movie...
Which was a good call for 2014.
Great call for 2014. John Wick won the action. I felt like it could have gone to the Equalizer. Personally, I like the Equalizer better, but I understand from a Rotten Tomatoes perspective, definitely John Wick. I'm just
wondering what they're going to do with John Wick 2 coming out.
I mean, he can. Here's an idea, Tony. He shoots some more people. I just want you to let that sink in. Don't say anything right away. But I feel like if John Wick shot some people in John Wick 2, that might work for a story.
I'm just saying, he's got nothing left to avenge.
Okay, here's where they can go with that, Tony. If he can help somebody out, that's what I'd really like to see from John Wick 2 is going from the selfish pissed out my dog or kick my dog really hard or whatever they did. I'm gonna go kill a bunch of them.
It's always Theon messing everything up.
I understand that everybody loved the dog and that was cool and everything, but it would be neat if he actually did help somebody else with his powers. If somebody needed protecting or whatever, and he's we're friends. I know that's the plot of every good guy action movie ever. That's the plot of The Equalizer. Although The Equalizer, holy crap, I love The Equalizer so much.
I need to see that one again. I only saw it in theaters. That's a red box for sure.
I need to see it again, Tony. I only saw it in theaters, but I just loved everything about that movie. Just the amount of destruction he wreaked on those guys. The amount of stuff that he just destroyed their entire organization piece by piece from within and without. And he blew everything up. He blew it all up. Like John Wick. Anyway.
Both very interesting, very similar movies. It's just, I'd probably say The Equalizer was a better movie, but I enjoyed John Wick a lot, so who cares? They're both awesome.
Well, a lot of people would say John Wick was a better movie, and I enjoyed it a lot more, as I mentioned, on the second viewing with my wife, because I saw it with I can't talk, Tony. I saw it by myself the first time, which sometimes colors my perception a little bit. When I see it with Ashley, it's a little bit more fun.
The choreography in John Wick is better.
I would say. That. Although the cinematography, I think there's some really cool stuff in Equalizer. I mean that. Yeah,
especially once you get to the Home Depot, basically.
And when the sprinklers go off, and he's in the Home Depot and shooting the guys in the rain, but it's not the rain. It's just so cool. I love that so much. Dude. That scene, I'm just like, I've never seen that before. It's like the in the rain thing, but these inside, but the sprinklers. I like The Equalizer a lot, guys. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, Denzel.
Anyway, that's not the movie. We are speaking of action movies today, Tony. We are talking about an action movie for the main podcast, which was Bring Me the Head of the Machine Gun Woman.
It's definitely a grindhouse movie. I think they said it was from Chile.
It's set in Chile. I don't know if it was produced in Chile or I can't remember. I looked up some of the details, and it's not any kind of a big name director, but man, this movie.
Before we go any further, we are going to be discussing some spoilers about this movie. There's just some things that need to be talked about at the end. So if you guys really, really want to see Bring Me the Head of the Machine Gun Woman, you should probably fast forward about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, the thing with this movie is that I guess we should give the setup. It's about this DJ who works in a club where there's this mobster guy. He's just a nobody. He lives at home with his mom, which is actually a big plot point at the end.
Plays some video games and
right. And the Bring Me the Head of the Machine Gun Woman is a play on a PlayStation 2 or 3 game called Bring Me the Head of some gangster guy. They show the game
all the
briefly.
Graphics are exactly Grand Theft Auto. They probably got the font from a Grand Theft Auto font.
Yeah, and that will really work too. But anyway, so he becomes, through a whole sort of series of events, overhears this conversation about this machine gun woman who is basically a female assassin type and how she's causing trouble for the evil gangster guy that he works for. And he, in order to save his life, says, I can get her. I can bring her to you, because they're going to, kill him for overhearing their conversation. And then he's like, I'm over my head. And it's about him going about trying to find her and he goes about his whole thing. He eventually does find her. It's very, very video game inspired.
Yeah.
The third person, every time he's driving in a car, they have this great third person car perspective like you get in Grand Theft Auto or a lot of other, sort of driving around type games.
Yeah, that fixed third person like a little bit behind.
Right, and it's very want to be clear here. This is a super low production budget type movie. It doesn't look awful, but it's almost intentionally looks bad in places, and you can kind of see some of the seams in the filmmaking. But I keep coming back to like a really, really rough comparison to Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah,
I know Tarantino would never be caught dead with digital film, which are, not film, but digital photography, which I'm pretty sure most of this was.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, they have the scratches on it. I think that was added.
Well, they gave up on the scratches like halfway through, didn't they?
Well, they bring it back towards the end.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that was added, later on as a post effect just to give you the sort of grindhouse feel. But it was just something about the storytelling, and it took so many unexpected twists, and the characters were, to me, especially the character of the DJ, was really, really interesting because of, he's very resourceful, but he's still kind of, like, he's almost...
He's just green at what he's doing.
Yeah, he's very green at what he's doing. Until the very, very end, all he has is a pellet gun, because he's got, like, this sort of... He's not very good looking, and he's running around with this pellet gun looking for this incredibly dangerous woman, trying to save his own neck by bringing her in somehow to the gangster, and... So there was a great connection with him. I felt like that his character had a lot of humanity, but there's also this side of it that's I don't know I don't know which side to come down on, because this is a movie that might be very, very sexist, Tony.
Just a smidge.
Okay, so here's the case, all right? First of all, Machine Gun Woman not wearing practical clothing. Just going to say that. I don't think I would go out killing in that particular outfit that she's wearing.
Yeah.
Does not have very much covering for the outside of her body.
Unless you're like trying to infiltrate a strip club or something like that.
Yes. A gun-themed strip club is what basically she's doing. And there's a plot in the movie where it seems like maybe she kind of falls in love with the DJ. I go back and forth because he captured, like, she lets him go, which I bought. I bought that she lets him go, and says, "Hey, get out of town. They'll come after you. You need to go and leave." And so he does. And the gangster kind of mentions, "Oh yeah, she let you leave, right? She, like, you're gonna say the Machine Gun Woman fell in love with you, ah." And I kind of thought that was a joke at the time. And then he meets up with her later, and she's in a she's basically just been shot by an attempted assassin. She's tied up, and she propositions him at that point, like, "Hey, you want to do it?" And he's like, "I guess I could untie you." And she's like, "No, you don't have to untie me." And I was like, "What? Wait a minute. This is... I'm not okay with this."
I looked at that as her being manipulative, really.
So that's the other possible side, that she's manipulating him, trying to get him to help her with her plan to get back at the gang lord, and that's a possibility too, I guess. They don't ever make it 100% explicit, to me anyway. But it did seem like that was at least one possibility.
Yeah, well, it's not the first time in that movie she used sexuality to, like, get into his head. Like, in that first time they meet, she, like, just puts the gun in her mouth and everything.
She fillets the gun, his plastic pellet gun. She just sees it and she's like the most boss move ever, just like wraps her lips around it. She's like, "Where'd you get this little toy?" Which I was talking about this with Brentley at work yesterday, and he's like, "Well, that's a dumb move. What if somebody shot that pellet gun inside your mouth? It may not kill you, but you're sure to be hurt."
You're like, what's the little thing at the back of your throat called? It's like the uvula or something like that.
It probably, I don't know.
Like, just blast that thing
like
off
a botanist?
With a pellet gun.
I know what a botanist is, but that was a joke, people. Botanists study plants. I understand. Please comment in the YouTube section about how stupid I am. But yeah, so like once it got into that, I felt a little bit uncomfortable because I was thinking it's not okay that he's having sex with this woman while she's tied up, but if she's manipulating him, it's kind of okay. But then he double crosses her, which that was a great moment because that sort of lends credence to me to the idea that she was playing him because she's like, all right, untie me, untie me, untie me. And he's just like, yeah, they kind of have my mom. And she's
Yeah, like the look she gives him whenever the mom shows up, she's like, I didn't know they had your mother.
Yeah,
Like,
she's just kind of like, oh, I misplayed this. I miscalculated.
Yeah.
But it really, it could, in my mind, it feels like this could be sort of an indictment of that stereotypical gamer culture, right? I mean, he is sort of a nobody. He does live with his mom, and yet he has these fantasies, and they do play out in the movie. Like, the one thing he isn't bad at is when he actually does end up shooting people, they don't make him like, oh, yeah, he doesn't know how to use a gun. Like, he's actually good at the part that he thinks he's going to be good at, which is the shooting part. But he doesn't actually understand people well enough to be able to get through what he wants. And ultimately, the way that the movie ends, which I thought the whole mission setup thing and then, like, mission passed or mission failed, that really, really worked for me a lot.
Oh,
Like
it segmented the movie perfectly, too.
Right, and the great thing was you start out with mission pass, mission pass, mission pass, and you have 4 of those in a row, and you're like, oh man, yeah, this guy is like, moving through it, and then it's like mission failed, and then you get like he just keeps failing his missions, and until eventually you get to the end of the movie, it's like game over because she gets away, and that line that she delivers, this is in another language, so you really can't tell a lot about the acting. This is a foreign language film with subtitles, but when he's telling her like, you're not really like this, you're not really a killer. And she's like, listen, I can come and live with you and your mom, but you're going to have to accept my little, like, eccentricities, and then drives the spike of her heel into the guy's eye. And my temper. Blows the guy's balls off with her gun. The bad guy, not the main character. Like, the way she said that line was just like, she's kind of disgusted by this kid at this point.
Yeah. Like, he tries to get in the car with her, and she just, like, boots him out.
Yeah, and she follows him, and he follows her, and then like she gets away, and it's game over.
Yeah.
So I felt like that this was a really clever movie, and I was disappointed. I went on IMDb, and there was nobody talking. I mean, they were talking about the very, very surface level of like, well, this is, I guess, a dumb action movie or whatever. But I thought this was actually trying to say some stuff that was really interesting. And even in the format of the grindhouse flick, like if you don't take the the sexism at face value, which there's a part of me that that if you were offended by this movie, I could not fault you for that.
Yeah. I mean, they do have like a full-on rape scene and stuff like that too. So.
Yeah, and the women aren't treated that well. But again, it almost seems like that. I don't know. Like there's a
they
part
still
of
made
it,
her badass and like on top of her own things though.
Yeah, I think, but there's a part of it that's actually sort of looking at that and shining a light on it, like by making it so over the top. Although again, there's a lot of other movies that just do it because. But there's something about the tone of this that makes me feel like it's trying to say something about that type of culture, Tony. It's trying to say something about this, like fetishes. Like she's basically a fetish, for him. She's his. What's the word I'm looking for? I had it in my head.
Femme fatale type thing.
She's this is a whole wish fulfillment fantasy for him. And then it shows how that he gets everything basically that he wants, but he can't hold on to it. Like he doesn't have a good grasp of how the actual world works.
Yeah. I could definitely see that.
So I don't know. I just felt like it. I was really personally moved by this movie. Not like to tears or something, just like I felt it was very compelling as a film. And I was really surprised to see that not a lot of other people had been affected by it as much. What was your take on it, Tony? What did you?
I'm always up for a good grindhouse movie. Like there's times where it goes a little too far. Like Hobo with the Shotgun had a few parts that were hard to watch, but this movie, it had a cohesive plot. It had like the little video game elements that gave it kind of a quirkiness and a little bit of levity. It was a solid movie. Like Netflix said it was going to be a 1.5 stars for me. And I'd give it at least 3.5, maybe 4.
I legitimately just today put it on 5, Tony. I liked it that much. And despite the problems that I had with it as far as like the political possibility, like it just, I was so impressed with what they achieved with, I don't know what the budget for this was, Tony, but it seemed like very, very low budget, and yet the script was really tight. It had like something to say. It went in directions you were not expecting at all. If this is not a fill in the blanks cookie cutter kind of story, for at least I didn't think so.
Yeah, it wasn't super predictable. I mean, you figured they would end up in a showdown at the end, but there was no way that you knew how it was going to get there.
Right, and the sort of, I don't know, like it just seemed like it went places that a lot of other movies wouldn't, and I really appreciated it. I thought that it was really enjoyable, and it gave me a lot to think about in addition to just, the sheer fun of, like I said, there's a surface level where you have your violence, you have your sexy lady shooting guns and stuff, but then there's also stuff to think about afterwards, and I dig that a lot, man.
Yeah. I also kind of like the idea of using video game style missions for my writing. I might try that out with my Writers Arena stuff this week. Just like, all right, this section has a very specific mission. It's pass fail. It has to do this.
It's a great, yeah, exactly. It's almost like shines a light on the writing process.
Yeah, it's just a way that they kind of laser focused everything in. There wasn't any fat in this movie.
Yeah, and it's a very short movie. It's like an hour and 12 minutes or something.
Yep.
It's really short, but it doesn't feel like, when you get to the end, you don't feel like, oh, is that it? Like, it tells the whole story, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to keep going. We're done. And I
kind of wonder if that's something that's changing with the video on demand culture that's like rising up, is that people aren't afraid to put out like 100 or an 80-minute movie or a 70-minute movie, like because there's less repercussions. Because if somebody goes to a theater, they want at least an hour and a half of entertainment, and now like you're at the film festival here on Netflix, you're seeing a lot more movies that clock in just at a little over an hour.
And I am fine with that, Tony. As a person who really enjoys good movies, but has to, like, I don't have a lot of
time.
Yeah, I mean, this movie, I didn't even watch this one all the way in one sitting. I could have probably found some time, but I didn't. But I watched it in 2 or 3. But it was just really nice to be able to take those like 20, 30-minute chunks and be done with them. Like I can't. I keep talking about Transformers, but there is no way I can watch Transformers 4 at home now. Like I set aside the one time in the theater to watch 2.5 hours of it. I can't. There's no possibility for me to sit, unless they put it on Netflix and I watch it like over the course of a month. But by that time, I'm going to lose interest. There's no way that for me to strap myself in for a movie except in a movie theater for that whole duration. So that shorter length is really, really cool.
Yeah. And a lot of times it lends itself better to movies in this genre or in horror and some of these other ones that are kind of hard to watch, because it allows the action to stay a little bit fresher instead of just trying to shoehorn stuff in.
Yeah, and Man, I mean, we've talked about this in the past, but that's one thing I really appreciated about Gravity. It's like hour and a half, you get all your action, you're done, and it was focused, and it was there was no fat on that movie at all, at least in my mind. I mean, there was stuff in it that you're like, well, what was that scene? Does she really need to be talking to that guy with the dogs? But I felt like it added emotional weight, and I think that
it slowed it down for just a few brief moments so you could catch your breath too.
Right, that's an important thing with the pacing, because you can't have it go full-blown all the way across. You got to have your highs and your lows and your ups and your downs, and your past missions and your failed missions. Again, if you're a writer and you just want to see like an outline for how a story should go, this is a good one. Your hero gets in trouble, has a mission, he always has a goal. Like, that's one of the things I tell you as a writer is 100% always have your main character have a goal in your, especially if you're writing a longer story. Like, he's got to be trying to get to something, and stuff's got to be trying to stop him, and he's always either getting to or failing to get to his goal. And that, again, it's not all victories, it's not all, failures, but you put in the right mixture of both and tell the story in that way. I don't know. Really dug this movie, Tony.
Yeah, for sure. It was an unexpected one, too. Like, I hadn't heard anything about this until you mentioned it the other day.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm a sucker for cool titles, and it's like, all right, this is called Bring Me the Head of the Machine Gun Woman. That could be bad, Tony, but it sounds freaking rad. Like, there's no way that you're not at least going to I'm not going to give this a shot if you call it.
Yeah, and very relevant to the movie itself. It's not like a title that doesn't have any bearing on the movie like some do.
Yeah, she's actually like they actually say the line, "Bring me the head of the machine gun woman," and she's called the machine gun woman.
Yeah, did they ever give her a name, or is she just the machine gun woman?
I don't think so. I don't think she ever had a name.
And again, I can't remember the main character's name either.
Well, it's all in Spanish, and we're not really familiar with all those names, so that I'll give us a pass, Tony. We're racist. We
No,
don't have to remember their names.
I don't remember the protagonist's name or antagonist's name most of the time in the movies we watch.
Even when they're in English.
The only time it
That one
bothers
guy.
me is, the only time it bothers me is like I'll finish reading a book. It takes like you spend 12 hours in a book and you've already forgotten a bunch of names. I hate my brain for that sometimes.
I think television is the best for remembering names because even in like Game of Thrones, if having read all those books, you have a pretty good handle on the characters. But even some of them, like having a face to put to those characters in the movie, like, oh, that's who Sir Loras is. All right, I remember now. Like I would forget, I mean, they would talk about it and be like, all right, kind of vaguely. Didn't he do something with? Yeah, okay. Like with the less major character. I mean, always know who Tyrion is. I always know who Jon Snow is. All like chapter name guys mostly, but
Yeah. But like someone like Dahario or something might
yeah, exactly.
slip your head
I
for a
couldn't
little
even
bit.
know. I didn't even know how to pronounce his name until they put it on the TV. I was like, oh, okay. There's something really cool about that aspect of having read the books before having read Game of Thrones. Everybody talks about the smugness aspect, but there's something neat in watching it and like the suspense of knowing where it's going. But like, I don't know, the stuff that's playing out with season has me just going like, oh shit, nope. I don't want to give any spoilers and say anything specific, but like having read the books and knowing where it's going and seeing her what she's doing, I'm just like, oh, don't do it, ah. Yeah.
Now I have to pay closer attention to that because I was enjoying it, but I didn't know it was like that squeal inducing, I suppose.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not even. I don't want to say anything else. I just.
And do you agree with what Film Crit Hulk was saying about the changes that have happened so far? Do you agree with what's going on where it kind of helps the
absolutely,
pacing?
absolutely. Like, let's bypass all the like whatever nonsense and off in the whatever that place is. Like getting her with great, setting with what's his face and taking her straight great. Like the whole fifth book or fourth book or whatever, he's just on a boat, and then like he's outside the city. Like, I'm trying to get to the city, I can't find him. Just get him there. We know where he's going. Why are you stalling? That was my big complaint about season 4, where like there was a lot of that stalling from the book carried over into the movie, where like you killed off some main characters that were big plot movers, and you didn't have people trying. Like, the only real mover and shaker in season 4, in my opinion, the person who was actually trying to change something was
Yeah.
right, which we see that paying off now, but everybody else was content to basically just hold the line and sit where they were at. Not trying to go anywhere, just trying to sit there at the wall, which interesting drama and stuff, but he's like, now that he's actually moving politically,
I'm really liking what's going on with him right now. That's been a lot of fun to watch.
And then you had and she's just like, I'm just going to sit here in this city and not go anywhere for the entire rest of the season. And she's kind of doing that now, but she has stuff to deal with at least. All of the again, they have their enemies killed, so now we're just hanging out. It's all good. Like, that whole entire 4th season was a lot of that. And there was some great personal individual moments in the season, and it was still solid, quote unquote, filmmaking for television. But they, like, the story as a whole basically didn't do anything in season 4, and that was a huge result of the books. It was really, really because of the books didn't do anything for the entire 4th book and a lot of the 5th book. And the show is basically just skipping over a lot of that. Even I think that they kind of had to put some of it in season 4, even though I felt like it dragged a little bit. It's like, all right, you got to do service to a little bit of what George wrote, but they're definitely like picking up the pace. Having the meeting between and like that didn't happen in the book at all. They're off on completely different paths. Like all of your threads in the book could just keep spreading and spreading and spreading apart. I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, why like these characters are no longer affecting each other really, and having them like crisscrossing in the like doing their thing together, that wasn't in the book. Just off like doing cleanup of the war, which again, it's realistic that they would still have like holdouts and stuff from after the fell, but it doesn't go anywhere. He's just off in the wilderness, like taking care of little forts of people who don't want to surrender yet.
Just not terribly compelling, and this season is definitely working towards something a little bit faster. So,
yeah. So, bravo to the changes that they're making. I think that they're very smart changes, and I totally agree with what Film Crit Hulk said. And you should follow Film Crit Hulk on Twitter and read all of his articles, because that dude knows what he is talking about when he talks about storytelling. Let me tell you.
I had this paranoid moment where I thought I was standing next to Film Crit Hulk at the film festival, because this guy was just talking about how many movies and manuscripts he has to read every week. And like people were asking him about his blog and stuff, but I was too shy to ask him what he actually did.
If he was Film Crit Hulk, he probably wouldn't have been talking about his blog.
Probably.
Because he specifically like wanted to distance himself from having his name or who he is associated with what he writes. And they had a great Reddit AMA on the True Film subreddit where he talked about that and talked about how that he doesn't. I mean, Badass Digest got renamed to Birth Movies Death because they couldn't get their articles referenced in bigger publications being named Badass Digest.
They still use that, like that's what they were up at the film festival. I met the main.
They just changed, Tony. Like they just now changed, like last week.
I was about to say because like it was all over the posters and everything last week.
Okay, well yeah, they just changed. It's Birth Movies Death now. But he was talking about how he doesn't. They do pay their authors, but I don't think he gets paid enough to, for what he does. For the 12,000, 15,000 word analyzations and cultural impact studies he does on
Maybe
those
he'll
movies.
do like a compilation book someday.
Maybe he has. You should.
Can you imagine buying a book that's entirely in caps?
I have bought that book, Tony. It's called Film Crit Hulk's Screenwriting 101.
Oh, I didn't know you actually had one.
You gotta read Screenwriting 101 because it's not just for screenwriting. It's great storytelling stuff. I know that I've talked about Film Crit Hulk in the past, but he is, holy crap, a great story analyst and like great writer as well. But I forget why I brought him up initially. There's something about a question that something about like he doesn't do any of his articles for the money. Like he doesn't get paid enough to to be compensated for what he does. He doesn't want to be. He wants to do it because that's what he loves to do, and he has a job in the film industry, and he does things with production and scripts and stuff like that. But it was, these are things that he does because he feels like doing it when he feels like doing it. He doesn't ever he's not on a schedule. It's not like he has some editor hounding him like, when's the next article coming out from Film Crit? I mean, all of his fans do that, but yeah,
if you got fans hounding you for that, it's probably a good thing.
And it is. And I'm not going to hound him for it, but I look forward to whatever he writes next.
I think we're going to transition into a question real quick.
All right.
Mortem Posts, at Mortem Posts on Twitter. Jen, awesome lady, designer of the logo. Going to be seeing the logo big whenever we go to Comic-Con in 2 weeks. Or when I go to
also, the designer of... Speaking of... I mentioned Brantley earlier in the podcast, and I talked over him a lot last podcast, and I apologize for my massive narcissism. I like to hear myself talk. I talk over Tony, but I can cut away from him. When I'm talking over Brantley, he's just sitting here going... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not seeing my face whenever I'm like looking at the screen waiting for my turn to talk. At least he was repping the podcast shirt.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. He was the one thing I had him because he bought one of our Octo Shark t-shirts, and Jen is a hand in designing that. Brantley actually drew the original design for the Octo Shark, and Jen took it and streamlined it and made it right for a t-shirt.
Digitized it, cleaned it up, did some cool work with it.
So
Something
Jen is a
like,
huge fan and friend and collaborator of ours, and we really appreciate her.
and also been doing cool stuff where she's been extras in a bunch of different movies. And someone brought, I think it was John Jones brought up that she hasn't been on this podcast, and I think that's something we need to remedy soon. So
I think
Jen,
that would be a good idea.
Hit us up with a movie that you think we haven't seen. We'll review it. You can be on here.
Well, we were talking earlier about how you haven't seen The Iron Giant, Tony.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I don't know for sure that that's one she wants to talk about, but you need to see it.
For sure.
Anyway, what's the question?
The question is, what are the best and worst remakes, or revamps, or reboots, whatever the kids are calling them these days?
I don't know about... I mean, there's probably a lot of contenders for worst.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the question. How do you... Like, what is a remake exactly? Is it the same... Like, for instance, if they make another Godfather movie today, Tony, let's say they did that, is it a remake of the film, or is it a new adaptation of the book?
It's an interesting distinction, but it probably depends on the visual style and what they're trying to do with it. Like, if it's going to go directly with Mario Puzo's book, or if it's going to be... Like, if it's going to be basically trying to recast Marlon Brando and everything. Like, what do you think about the It remake? Is that a remake of the book? Is it a reboot of the series? Like, what do you think's going on with that?
The one with Cary Fujikata? I don't know what the guy's name is.
Yeah.
True Detective cinematographer guy.
Yeah.
I think, based on what I know, because they're making 2 full-length movies out of the single book, that it is going to be a remake of the book. I really hope it is. I know that the miniseries really touched on it as well, and it's hard to detangle that stuff. And then the miniseries wasn't a movie, so do you call that a remake of the TV series since it was a movie? Since it's going to be a movie now, but it's 2 movies? I mean, it probably would be easier to go with something like RoboCop, you know, and just say, like, well, there was the movie, and now there's another movie.
Yeah, and like he starts out silver, and they're like, we need him to be black, and that's like the only difference, except for the new RoboCop's not that good.
The other thing is, I mean, even things like Godzilla, right? Like, is the legendary Godzilla a remake, and what is it a remake of? Is it? I mean, it's not a remake of the 1995 Godzilla. It's not a remake of Godzilla.
I would say that the new one was a reboot of the franchise, though, because like they set up a whole new cast, some new rules, the new way he looks. And it's probably going to be going into some of the other monsters that have been killed off in the past.
Okay, yes, but so that's another question. I'm not trying to belabor the point, but it's a really weird sort of, like, if you go down the rabbit hole of, like, was the Incredible Hulk a remake of the Hulk from Ang Lee?
I think that was a reboot of the franchise.
So does the reboots of the franchise don't count? If it becomes a franchise and then you remake the franchise, that doesn't count.
What about, like, The Evil Dead?
That seems like a remake. And that was a very obvious remake of the first movie where they're like, look, we know the first movie, kind of cheesy, but was actually going to try to be horror, and we're going to do that with less cheese. Yeah.
And there are definitely aspects of the first one that I liked both in the original and in the remake, so I didn't feel like it was entirely necessary, but I kind of dug it.
Well, and the thing, we talked about, you know, reboot of the franchise. Evil Dead is a franchise.
Yeah.
But the Evil Dead movie was not a reboot of the Evil Dead franchise because the franchise of Evil Dead has become something else than what the first movie was.
Yeah.
And
now, like, they're making the Ash versus the Evil Dead TV show, which is bringing back Bruce Campbell to it.
Yeah. I'm not excited because I wasn't a fan of any of the Evil Dead movies after the first one.
You still need to see Army of Darkness.
Maybe I do. Maybe I'll like it. The second one just got like so slapstick so fast, and so I was like, what? This wasn't... I liked the first one. What happened to the... We've talked about this in the past too, Tony, but... So we've dodged the question completely of which are the best and which are the worst, but, I mean, obvious sort of, you know, like, contenders would be The Departed, The Thing... Not The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah,
Not the new remake, the old remake.
Like the exact same path, so it was almost more of a reboot.
Do what now?
I was saying that the prequel to the thing, the newer one, the one where I
Yeah, yeah.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead or whatever,
I haven't
like
seen that yet.
that was supposedly a prequel, but it treaded the exact same ground as the one from the '80s. So I don't know if that like really counts as like a remake or a prequel or what it would be.
I was
It's kind
talking about The Thing being a remake of The Thing from Another World, which
yeah.
was an adaptation of a short story, which gets back into the whole question of, is John Carpenter's The Thing a remake of The Thing from Another World or a new adaptation of the short story, The Thing from Another World?
Was the new War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise a full remake?
See, it gets super hairy, doesn't it? Ah.
All right, what is something that originally was a movie that got remade that you actually liked?
Oh, I was about to say, well, just like what was the thing that was actually a movie and got remade, and I was going to say Old Boy, but I didn't. I didn't even see the remake, so I don't know.
I haven't seen the remake either.
I don't think you need to. From what I've heard, you really don't need to.
Yeah, and the thing is, I like Josh Brolin, but just not really needing to see that.
And I was, I liked Let Me In. I was fine with Let Me In. I actually I heard everybody talking about Let the Right One In, and for some reason the Swedish version just didn't grab me. But something about the American remake, I was like, I like this. I dig this. And people are going to be freaking out like that I like the American better. And I'm not saying I didn't watch the whole thing of the original, so I'm not saying that.
I think sometimes like you just have to be in the right mindset for a movie with subtitles because you're definitely not watching near as much of what's happening on the screen.
Yeah, that's true. And you like the nice thing about subtitles, we talked about this in the past, but that you don't get to look away. So it demands your attention. But sometimes you don't I don't want that. But that's a good one. I'm trying to think
I had to finish the last 15 minutes of The Machine Gun Woman this morning because I was too tired to follow the subtitles last night.
Oh yeah.
I got send words here and there, so I just decided I was going to get up and do it like a better way.
And then I woke you up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a text.
What's that?
I said, then I sent you a text at 2 o'clock in the morning and woke you up.
I was awake for it, I think.
Oh, okay. It may have been 1 o'clock your time, but I was like, I better text him and make sure that we're actually recording tomorrow. I don't want to have
our schedule's been a little bit weird lately, especially because like it's going to be weird 2 more times in the next month, like one for Comic-Con and one because I've got a 5K to run.
You know what weirds me out about remakes, Tony, to get back on that discussion? And this is something I've been thinking about, and I don't have a definitive answer yet, but it's bizarre to me that they're not usually good. Like everybody complains
got all
about
the elements there.
Like everybody complains about remakes. They're like, "Oh, it's not as good." And I don't understand that. I don't understand how you've seen the original movie, you know what worked, you know what maybe didn't work. You have the opportunity to update it and say, "We're going to take the good stuff and then like build on that." And they don't. I mean, I look at things like remixes and, covers of songs, and there are a lot of covers and remixes that I like better than the original song. Maybe I'm weird. Yeah. That I don't know
like
if other
most
people
of Bob Dylan's work.
Do what?
Most of Bob Dylan's songs sound better when somebody else does them.
Okay, I don't know a lot about Bob Dylan, but I will
saying,
take your word for it.
Like All Along the Watchtower, all these other major songs that you've probably heard and didn't realize that Bob Dylan wrote them. There's a lot of them out there like that.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, so the way I see that happening is that you've heard the song, you know what you like about it, you're like, I'm going to punch up like a little bit more of this aspect of it, or a little bit more of this, because this, that really speaks to me, but there's not enough of it in the original. And so you get, in my opinion, a lot of covers that end up improving, or at least giving you something cool and interesting and new. I like Rascal Flatts' cover of Life is a Highway more than I like the original one. I'm sorry if you really love the original. I think it's clearer. I think the singing's better. Yeah.
Or like Johnny Cash's Hurt over 9 Inch Nails, that sort of stuff. Right.
So how is it that we get this phenomenon of remakes of songs? We call them covers, but that's what it is, right? It's a remake of the song by bands, and they're better a lot of times, but the movies...
I think you've got a lot more... It's the difference between a 2-hour thing and a 3-minute thing. And you also have a lot more chances to get the song right. Like, you could sit there and rework the song 50 times in a day trying to hone it in, but you can't really do that with a whole movie.
I wonder, too, if it's a misunderstanding of why something was good and popular. and
Could
what
be.
connected with people. Because I think that with music, it's a lot more intuitive of saying this part connects with me and I want to pay homage to that, and amplify that a little bit more or whatever. But when you remake a movie, a lot of times I think that they don't dig below the surface. They say like, all right, well, RoboCop is about this guy who's a robot and he's a cop, and I didn't see the the remake, and I only saw the original once, like way back in the day. So I have not an experienced RoboCop person. But if you don't get what made the original good, and you don't really understand the story elements that are at work there, maybe you don't do the right thing with the remake, if that makes sense.
I also think there's not enough time that passes between remakes nowadays. Like, if you look at what The Equalizer did, because it was an old TV show. Like, it was a serialized TV show that was well liked back in the day, but enough time had passed that you could actually make this movie, take the good elements from that, and make a really cool movie out of it, and take like the good stuff, and they did it right. Whereas a lot of things like the Spider-Man reboots that happened, it wasn't a whole lot of time before they were already like diving back in.
Well, they had to do that because Sony has had to be in production on Spider-Man, or they had the rights revert back to Marvel.
It's like that weird, lost version of the Fantastic Four that happened that they just did.
Roger Corman tried to make.
Yeah,
I think you can get that online somewhere, but it is not officially available anywhere.
Yeah, I remember once seeing a trailer for it, but I never got to see the movie, and it looked so weird. But I kind of want to see if there's a torrent of it or something. I'd like to see that movie.
But yeah, so there's legal reasons why they have to be in production on Spider-Man. And also, Spider-Man, in spite of the fact that the third Sam Raimi one was a disappointment, like, it's still a giant moneymaker. Like, if you put Spider-Man in your film, if you have your people, that, I think that is a big problem also with remakes, is that they think they can coast by with the name recognition. Like, the remake gets made a lot of times not because the studio's like, man, we really love this movie, let's remake it. It's people have heard of this movie, let's remake it.
Yeah.
And so you don't get a lot of love in the craftsmanship, whereas something, you remake something like 21 Jump Street, sorry, in the 21 Jump Street, man, I'm talking way too fast and stumbling over my words. But the coffee, man.
You remake 21 Jump Street.
Yes. You remake the television show 21 Jump Street into a movie, and if you do that as just a straight remake, the sort of boring Hollywood remake, that is a probably forgettable generic action film. But you make it into an R-rated comedy with Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, and you do the Miller and Lord treatment, suddenly you have something that's more than just a remake, that you're actually saying, I want to tell a story here. There's something in this universe with these characters that I think could be interesting, and put a different spin on it. They don't always have to be a completely different spin. The Equalizer's, very similar, I think, to the take of the original series.
Yeah, I didn't watch enough of the original series. Like, I saw some clips online whenever I was looking up the Equalizer, but I haven't watched full episodes.
So yeah, I think that really it's, oddly enough, I think a lot of it comes down to love and talent. You've got to actually be passionate about the project you're making, or it's going to show. I think that passion and hard work really show through, Tony. I'm reading, did you pick up the Star Wars Conquer the Universe?
Yeah, I'm like 4 chapters in. It's really good so far.
I'm listening to that as well.
They just finished with the chapter on the 501st.
Okay. How Star Wars Conquer the Universe? Go ahead.
I was just saying the 501st is such a cool group of Star Wars fans. You have to have like the perfect costume and everything to join them, but they're all over the place. They're recognized by Lucasfilms. They do all sorts of cool charity events. It's an awesome organization. You guys should Google it real quick. Just see how much time and effort these people put into the organization, into the costumes, into everything.
Yeah, and that is the whole sort of fandom element of Star Wars. A very big part of this book. I don't want to rehash all of it, but it's very cool. And I mentioned the book last week kind of as a sort of a discouragement to me, just saying like, yeah, you got to have some money to do like anything. It feels bad when you don't have money. But it also is an interesting aspect. I'm in the part right now where it's talking about George Lucas writing Star Wars and how difficult that was for him. Like, he talks about bleeding on the page, and that seems like something a lot of writers like to throw around, like, oh, yeah, bleeding on the page. Like, no, like, he really hated writing. He did not want to be like he would have let somebody else do it if he could have, but he goes through. They talk about all the drafts that he went through and the stuff that got thrown out and the weirdness, and he's like tries this one thing and it's like it doesn't resonate with your head as anything resembling Star Wars except for a couple of names, and then he keeps like showing it to people and chipping away stuff and showing it to people and like chipping away and rewriting, and like I think that there's something to be said for just that element of really hard work and like bringing like he's just I'm not gonna I'm gonna make this right. Granted, some of that's the studio. Like if he could have just made it, that's part of the problem. Probably later on when he remade Star Wars, is he could just get the green light for whatever. But back in the day when the first Star Wars was coming out, like nobody knew who George Lucas was. And Star Wars is a ridiculous
idea. He had done
idea.
like American Graffiti first, didn't he?
Yes, American Graffiti and THX 11 whatever. American Graffiti is what really that was why he was able to work on Star Wars, because he made pretty good money off of that. He could have retired on the money from American Graffiti and a decent lifestyle. But he goes back to Star Wars and just it was impressive to me how much he did, despite the fact that he really he didn't enjoy it. He didn't like it. He wasn't getting into the rhythm of anything. He's just grinding away trying to make this thing that he can kind of see in his mind a reality. And there's a lot to be said for that, because there's so much of the writing and artistic lifestyle that is seen as this poofy, the muse comes to you and you're inspired and the words flow out onto the page, and sometimes that happens and that's great, and for some people that's sort of how it goes, but
there's a lot more people that like having written more than actually writing, I think.
But I think that the fact that just because you don't enjoy doing something doesn't mean that thing is not worthwhile. The art that is just horrible and difficult to make is not worse than the art that just flows out. Both of those are the same. The end product is what matters, and how you feel about it doesn't.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And a lot of times you'll feel good about stuff. It's like, this is actually not that good, guys. And sometimes you'll feel bad about something, and just this is so.
We're just all terrible judges of our own work, really.
We are, and I think that it's important to remember that how you feel about your art and how you feel about yourself is not a reflection of reality. There are days when I feel like I am a loser, I am crap, I suck at everything, and sometimes that kind of gets in a little bit. But I've gotten to the point now where I realize, no, I don't. I mean, I don't feel like I have to let that feeling define me. And I think that that's important. Everybody has depression. I don't know about everybody, but I have my down days. But just because I feel bad about myself and bad about what I'm doing doesn't mean that what I'm doing sucks. And if I feel great about it, doesn't mean that it's great.
It's a pretty big distinction to be able to make. It's something that you kind of you have to learn over time. It's not something anybody can tell you. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are in their younger years that feel depressed a lot, that are going through the same thing. And eventually you start to learn how you yourself handle it. And you've definitely come a long way even since we started the beginning of this, if that's how you feel now.
Yeah, well, I don't always. I mean, I will still get that I just suck at everything. But there's a part of me, I've trained this part of me in the back of my mind to be we're just going to ride this out. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep being a person, and you're not going to feel this way in a couple days. So just, this is not real. This is how you feel. I understand that how you feel is very important to your perception of reality, but it is not actually reality. And kind of developing that little voice, just sort of arguing with my inner depression, I think really, really helps. Again, I know other people have it worse, and maybe you can't do that, and maybe it lasts for longer for you and it feels more real. But you know what? It is not real. It is how you feel, and how you feel. I'm not trying to belittle it, but I'm saying it's a lie. How you feel is just a feeling. It has no bearing on reality. Your house does not care if you're happy or sad. Your house is still your house. Your work is still your work. Your art is still your art. You are still you. That's how I feel.
I think that's a good point to transition out of this. That was inspiring.
All right. Well, where are we transitioning to, Tony?
I think we're transitioning into the end of the episode.
Oh, well, we're not even an hour yet. We got to give them an hour.
I thought we were over an hour.
We are at 55 minutes and 27 seconds, Tony.
I just made some editing for you.
Yeah. Well, Anyway,
All right, where are we moving towards?
I don't know. We could cut it off, I guess. I'm watching a new Asylum film.
Oh yeah, what Asylum film?
It's Road Wars.
Is it a Mad Max thing?
It is very much a Mad Max thing. I don't know if I can pull up a screenshot of it, but like they're out in the desert and they have the cars that are all modified and they're like people are wearing crazy face paint. It's actually I'm not all the way through it yet. I'm about a quarter of the way in, but I actually really like the direction of the movie. All things aside, all things being equal, with Asylum making super cheap movies, there's some bad acting that kind of drags it down in some places. But some of it's really good, and I don't know. I don't know who the director is. I haven't looked it up, but it's really interesting to me when I'm always looking for the movie that I can find something that I like about, Tony, and a lot of times it's just sort of like, all right, there's nothing redeeming about this one. Moving on. But when you can see glimmers of like, oh yeah, there's some stuff that's working here. There's some good flow in this. All right, yeah, I'm liking this. And by the way, they have it's the twist on Mad Max is that they're fighting zombies because. Zombies have to be added to everything.
It's just the cheap way to add horror.
They still don't have water, but apparently, in addition to having water, they also have zombies. I don't know how all that. They don't talk about how that happened, or what yet anyway. What transpired to make the apocalypse? They're just, wasteland, crazy looking cars, people with face paint. We don't need to tell you why. I don't think Mad Max tells you why either. So. I guess that's sort of a loving tribute to that. But I really do love those, the Asylum movie that comes along, the low budget thing that has some merit to it.
Do you think this one will have merit?
I do. The thing that's interesting to me is that I've been watching like some other low budget creature features. Like the Sci-Fi Channel last week had just all these snake movies, and I was like, I'm just going to record like all these low-budget B-movie snake pictures, right, on my DVR and watch some of them. And it was just sad. I've seen bad Asylum films, but this was a different, like, it wasn't like they were bad. It was like that they were boring.
Yeah, they just weren't trying.
They were trying too hard, maybe? Like, they almost look like a real movie, except for... I don't know how to describe it.
It's like if you've got a low budget and like you're not like you don't have like the people that do it, you got to go like Monster from Bikini Beach style and just have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and it seemed like I'm not saying that you don't put your craft into it, but they either spent too much or not enough or both. It's just the Asylum. There's something about the way the Asylum does something. Their aesthetic that is a lot more unique to me anyway now than I realized. I thought there's a part of me that thought, anybody can make a cheap B movie and it'll probably look about the same. But no, the Asylum actually has a very distinct style compared to a lot of these other ones. That it sticks out. I'm watching this, I'm like, this is just not the Asylum. This is not what I want. It's not enough. Or it's too much or something. It's a weird thing. It's a weird balance to walk, and I don't know how that works. I don't know. I can't explain it to this day. People, frequently, maybe not frequently, but occasionally, I'll get Twitter questions and be like, well, how come, defend your love of the Asylum? And I'm like, I can kind of sort of explain it, but really, I just like it, all right? I don't know. There's something charming to me about that aesthetic that other people don't get.
I've gotten it at times. But
not all of them. I don't love all their stuff, obviously, but when they hit it, like they hit it in a way that I don't usually see other movie studios do. So.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very, very miss or hit with me. Like mostly miss.
That's okay, Tony. I know I'm like way out here on my weird little lonely island watching my stupid little BC. Not BC. I'm saying B or C level creature features. But I like it. I like doing it.
The biggest regret I had from the film festival is not getting to see Stung, which is one that we need to watch whenever it actually gets distributed, if it gets out there.
What is that?
It's a B movie about wasps.
Ha ha. Oh, okay.
Where you get stung and then you start turning into wasps, like giant, horrible wasps. And I saw the trailer for it and I wanted to see it, but it was at midnight and I was already like just dying of how tired I was, and I had to drive down the mountain because I didn't have a hotel that night. So that movie, I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, oh, this is Al's movie. This is definitely Al's movie.
I'm trying to. There's a book on Amazon called Stung. I guess that's not the one. Oh wow, that's a great poster. That's somebody about to get stung in the eye with a wasp stinger.
Oh yeah,
I want that poster.
That was great.
Somebody buy me that toaster. Don't no, I don't. Don't buy me stuff. I'm good. Support the podcast.
That's the last thing to talk about. Over at humanechoes.com, we have a place where you can support us through PayPal. We've got subscriptions, we've got one-time donations, we've got an Amazon link where if you don't want to spend anything on our actual site, but you use Amazon, click that, go through, and buy something, we get a cut of it. There's a lot of different ways to support us. You can drop reviews, you can do all that stuff. Kind of informal this week, but yeah, humanechoes.com. Check it out.
We love all of you guys who support already. You make it just a little bit easier for us to do this, and we still do it for the love, but it's fun to also do it maybe for the money.
Yeah. So it's nice to be able to actually take money from the podcast to go see Ex Machina so we can talk about it and bring you guys a new review. So.
And that is what we will be doing later on this week. Tune in next week, and we will have a review of that. We were going to do a 0.5, but we're not really on the bleeding edge of this anymore. But it has gone apparently a lot wider with its distribution, so there's a good chance that you can see this movie near you, even if you're in a little podunk town like where I live. So if you can, I highly recommend go out, support independent filmmaking, support these kind of films, because if they don't get the money, they're not going to bring them to our theaters. Yeah. I love Avengers.
Be the change you want to see in the world. Support indie movies.
Yeah. Vote with your dollars.
And we'll probably be supporting a big blockbuster movie by doing a 0.5 episode on Mad Max.
Yeah,
so
we
can do both.
We will do that next, I guess it'll be a couple weeks from now. I don't know when it comes out. When it
May
comes
14th.
Out, it comes out.
It'll probably come out a couple days after our Ex Machina episode. So
awesome.
We will be bringing you some extra content on that. Support big movies. Support small movies. Support what you love. Hopefully
us.
That includes us. You guys have an awesome week. We will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.